Lord David Frost, it's once again a pleasure to have you with us. Let's move on to the next general area, society and our public services, if we may. Let's start with the NHS. Many of our audience regard the NHS in its current form as unfit for purpose. So if you had any say in the matter, what kind of measures would you undertake to transform healthcare in the United Kingdom?
Well, I think the NHS is a Soviet-style system. It doesn't work in a market way, and it makes a virtue of the fact. And therefore, there are very, very few incentives in the system of any kind to use resources properly, to treat patients as customers, to care about their needs, in other than the most immediate fashion. And that's why we have the problems that we've got, long waiting lists. If you don't ration in one way, you ration in another, and we ration by queuing, and there's a huge backlog. Now, we know that many European countries have much better systems. You don't have to move to a US style system, although the US system has changed a lot over the years as well, it has to be said. I think we should be putting in place a royal commission whose task is, explicit mandate is, work out how you transform the NHS into a European style insurance system, still free at the point of use largely, but with more incentives and more rationality in the system. And you can't do it overnight. That's a task for 10 years, maybe more. But you have to set the direction and begin the change. And if we don't do this, we're just going to see this endless kind of Niagara Falls of public money pouring in and not changing the outcomes. And I do think, as Conservatives, for the first time, there's a bit of an opportunity. For the first time, I hear people saying, maybe it isn't just the money. Maybe there are some other problems with the NHS that we need to look at. And we should be trying to build on that and capitalize on it and take it in a different direction.
Another difficult topic, education and our school system. Many parents are now sickened by what their children are being taught in schools. This includes things like critical race theory, gender identity, and societal values in general. What do you think we can do to combat this?
It is very difficult because we've let a lot of genies out of the bottle in recent years, and pulling it back is not going to be straightforward. We must have a go. I think in schools, the important thing is we need to get back to the principle whereby teachers are not teaching ideologies, but they are teaching about a range of views. And it's the job of teachers to try and reflect all views in society as they are in society. Ideally, you shouldn't know what teachers' own political or ideological views are. They should be trying to get across what's necessary in modern society. I do think some of obviously the Cass report, the whole kind of trans agenda just seems to have gone off in a kind of freakish, totally disconnected from medical reality route. And I hope that we are going to see some pushback on that. But I think the key thing is to, remind teachers they are professionals. They're supposed to be educating. They aren't kind of ideological commissars. And we should be clear about that. We should require it in contracts, and we should try and kick people out of the profession if they won't do that. That's what would happen anywhere else. Of course, the broader problem, and perhaps we'll come on to this, is that, society itself is going in that direction. And, the schools are swimming in a sea of diversity, inclusion, Equality Act sort of provisions that makes it much more difficult.
Many of our social and cultural institutions appear to be dominated by exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. The media, health, education, gender identity, and general values in society, the arts, publishing, advertising, even the police. So what can Conservatives do to redress that balance?
Well, I think a lot of it comes in this country from the Equality Act, and that is the legislative instrument. It's encouraged this a positive discrimination mentality. It's encouraged a sort of group rights mentality where everybody sees their own advantage as being coming with finding some identification with a disadvantaged group and trying to sort of profit from that. And now we're seeing exactly what I always feared would happen, which is that, everybody is trying to get on the bandwagon, every opinion, everyone, even sort of, if you like, privileged white men, are trying to define themselves as an Equality Act group. And we're getting in this war of everybody against everybody. And we have just got to try and pull this back. And I do think the Equality Act needs huge reform. In my view, you just need a simple non-discrimination provision. And, all the panoply that has come with that should just be swept away. The government doesn't have to require, for example, DEI, ESG investing. That's entirely decisions the government takes. Doesn't have to do that. Could sweep it away quite quickly if it wished. So I think, government action to sweep away some of this stuff that just tilts the level, the playing field so much in this crazy direction, and to allow free speech and free debate, that would produce a different dynamic, because it's obvious that a lot of people don't like this and are just frightened to speak out about it. And if the government could, stand up for them, change the framework, I think we'd see things change quite quickly.
Do you think there is institutional bias within the judiciary and within the civil service?
I think the amount of deliberate ideological bias in either the judiciary or the civil service is probably quite low. I mean, no doubt it exists, but I don't think there's a kind of large group of people who are working to sort of subvert the government or its laws. I think there is quite a lot of kind of cultural bias, probably, and a lack of understanding that the views that are commonplace in the civil service and probably in the legal profession are not necessarily commonplace in wider society. And there's a much wider range of views. And I think that's what you tend to see. Civil servants tend to be selected from people who sort of believe in public service. They believe in the public sector. They believe they're not necessarily the most kind of go-getting people themselves. And I think that view of society gets reflected in the decisions they take. They do believe there's probably a prejudice in favor of international courts, international law, very structured international cooperation that you saw in the reactions to the Brexit vote, and we'll see on the ECHR as well. So I see that sort of thing as the problem. And it is a relatively recent problem. I think one of the big differences in the last sort of 20 or 30 years is the way that there has been this cultural change. When I joined the Foreign Office, which was the late 80s, it was a very conservative with a small c environment. It just was not the soft left kind of currency of debate that you have now. So it's happened quite recently, and once again, it can change if you change your selection processes, change for excellence, select for excellence, and give proper leadership from the top as ministers.